Their species identity of volume. I have the plan. And you'll learn simultaneously about computers, how they work. I'll cite books. For example, in relationship to, we'll also use correlation nature simultaneously inherent, active, and progressive means, which are unfathomed, recorded by the human species in the same semi-ancient trap since before modern nations, religions, messengers. Thank God, because that is also evidence of how free speech is prevented. Science. And roles with that as victims, defenses of roles with that as fact treatment, premises treatment, sequence treatments, identity treatments, finite, active, and progressive treatments. They can't simultaneously defend that, for example, and afford to have discerned what is actually being said and communicated by every single individual, distinctly, sickly distinctly, for the same method that uses this as a breaching method here and there. Self-value. Exploited not only that way overall, and with those locations, all of them, identity around locations, all opinions and conviction natures, in relationship to the elements of correlation nature as evidence, denied, because of how offensively with all locations, areas, and states, victim interbranch, victim intersciences, victim private database relationships simultaneously, victim overt criminal enterprises, simultaneously all victim predators, kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, finite, active, progressive lies and styles of it, and identity thefts and frauds, and natures of it, roles, self-valued. Only understanding through needs to hide their only realize per the child abuses method, where and how it simultaneously helps and hurts everyone. Till has bonded natures of criminal citizens, natures of positive treatments, and of styles of that, as identities of names and of titles, also recorded and involved in where and how the branches of government originally and still, other nations' governments originally still, recorded, for example, with crime methods, pretending people have conspiracy theories. If they speak about American history correctly, up front, they have uses of knowledge to get over on correlation nature, on science, while pretending to be for it simultaneously. That's evidence. It's tied to how they hide those lie progressions, tied to how they already have been fabricating audio and video, sticking in faked transcripts to represent audio and video that they totally just made up and that they changed the narratives and the reality of. And their motivations of it were connections between campuses of each age and nature and uses of the homeschool people, all differences employed to roles with a breaching method all missed, while being forced as victims to entertain correlation nature's forsaken and self-valued non-existence, even though all were our victims. All people are identities of value/value progression. Each age distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. Supposed to have the surface values of the Constitution defended with pretended other and pretends other originally still. Our founders wanted us to use correlation nature to demonstrate, for example, they would have to pretend to before the Constitution by presenting it as theater. by speaking for it as theater, by summaries of the narratives outside of that context. Never allowed correlation nature's evidences. What needs to pretend other and has been pretending other through criminal foreign influences with delusions. I'll show you how they're physical delusions. I'm not a doctor. I'll show you how we can delineate the delusions from their criminal foreign influences. The doctors associated with mental health care, psychology, medicine, and overt criminal enterprises in their drugs, and the people next to everyone, because of a crime method, where if you try to, reveal justice for anyone, even for yourself, for groups, or for anyone, in relationship to the predicate acts, delivery systems, bonded by what? Bonded by a predicate acts delivery system method, an archetypal criminal enterprise. I'm not a lawyer, not a police form, not a criminal, not a judge, not a military. Defense was not the hierarchy of defense of and as each modern nation. It is in collusion with that which was entrenched here since before our founding parents were even born, since before the kings and nations associated with the sickly, distinctly entrenched predicate acts delivery system method. That slavery was, for example, part with always, not denying exceptions, not denying exception nature. You can't say that about racism. That's not a counter that can say that it is true always. Not denying exceptions, not denying exception nature. Pretending such can't simultaneously defend that nature of logic and the Constitution from the quality of fact-keeping nature necessary and only existing to next necessary to counter all that involved with that. Hundreds of nations at once, same thing. Same sick identity of sciences. All victims. All with narratives with the perfect world. Everyone speaking through others in identities of the law. Investigations, investigators, and vetting. Influenced by what is force sustained. With the youngest kids' campuses. Sickly distinctly. From how it is sustained through colleges and universities. And through medical campuses. And through fire campuses, and through EMS campuses and systems, and database relationships since before computers. The ancient republic revealed. While humanity revealed it through and as an identity of relations before they became criminally foreign influenced. It was hyper positive. And they realized that how to cause evolution's fruits and gifts by being simultaneously positive to what is true always, not denying exceptions as sequence true, before the order of the finite, the smallest detail, thing, boxing, and then while as that, the value of the smallest thing. Vaccine. The identity of correlation nature has an identity of relationship to itself that is only positive or negative, where and how it will only stay positive unto itself, where and how it is making more temporary or lasting forever nature, and where and how all exceptions in exception nature are in demonstration of the same thing about how it will only stay positive unto itself, not as itself. Exceptions and exception nature is temporary nature. Life, but it is a temporary / lasting quality of diffusion. Criminal insidiousness itself is evidence to correlation nature's identity of value / value progression actually spoken for by logic proper and with no criminal foreign influences, and as that nature of the law, simultaneously greater than, and while simultaneously more finite than, the smallest thing, while completely as its value. All exceptions and exception nature, for example, our choices, are our systems, our values / value progression systems, our defenses of premises treatments with that, sequence treatments with that. No. While simultaneously, they're not just that they are other from the one of and as the perfect world, making more of itself. See, the perfect world is one of the phrases, as all phrases and as all words and values, formally and informally. There are manifest styles of premises treatments, sequence treatments, positive treatments, truth treatments, facts treatments, use of all words / values, with criminal foreign influence premises treatments, sequence treatments, value / value progression treatments. This is a method that kept / keeps all the corruptions that is actually recorded tied to the predicate acts delivery system method that was entrenched and actually recorded. The methods recorded it. See, those methods are evidences that they have the victim reactions to what is off campuses maintained of each age and nature. Before people can become any highest position, they have to be little kids. They have to come through what is designed to only capable of self-value, of defending itself through what is only capable simultaneously of fact treatment nature, self-valuing, the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts and natures, blamed on other things, others themselves, even when correctly blamed on them wrongly. And those lies and those physical delusions being and having been employed per definition of employment that no one discerned. Because this preaching method came from some ancient times, since before modern nations' religious messengers, to keep that from being discerned. To keep roles with science is abridged from our nature before it became entertained, perfect world forsaken. Fact treatment nature, science, word / value like science, like positive, like truth. Abridged, that means, for example, that means simultaneously they were all criminal insidiousness natures, forced to roles with that which for slavery. Then to perpetuate what they did, which was the identity thefts of our founding parents, as collusion with the identity thefts of the surface nations associated with the fact treatment nature impositions upon people who need to explain the roles with and the origins, the actual origins of slavery and of the Revolutionary War and of other wars, recorded, confessed, and demonstrating having been and being per fact treatment nature, trained and forced. Translations of them, teachings of them, lessons of them maintained in collusion with that which keeps that. So we could use pantheism the world over, with the same exact method. So we have each identity. When you have each identity of, they forced every identity of industry also, which is not even a living thing. But it's tied to living people. They're forced and roles with and as that nature, preventing, of roles with extortion, pretending that in other words, there are means and money that are on records with businesses held. But for example, if we take people stacking spots, see, there's people stacking with modern infrastructure and means to it. It means to fathom it. That all were forced victims only capable of fathoming as the roles with the standards, as the roles with what is agreed to be measured out in the contexts only capable of being peace. That which originally instilled is forged to collusion with and as what perpetually can't counter what originally instilled maintains fluent, easy, remote uses of all investigations, investigators, and vetting identities of and as the value of each identity of the ground. Period. Distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. The species identity of volume is a self-valued victim reaction to what forced sick things forced entertained by the mind, by the soul. So this is, in other words, even when they blame things on things that were correct, they're adding lies to it and making that self-value. For example, when they teach people about divide and conquer in the narratives they hold with that, in the context where they make takes on history as trained, as that only capable of being the quality of fact treatment nature, premises treatments, time treatments, identity treatments, names treatments, are identity treatments. And identity has a simultaneous relationship, not just to positive and negative, and to identity simultaneously, and to its identity of value progression simultaneously, but to the value of that, which is a conjunction as conduit to what is evolution's fruits and gifts, and the E added to Santa Claus's name, and the Santa Claus discerned, and how to properly counter the predicate acts delivery system method leveraged against American citizens sickly distinctly, leveraged against humanity of every modern nation's locations sickly distinctly. Each position of the human fact treatment nature, no matter how different, through contrast, it is that they are recorded victim roles that need to be positive in treatments anyway, and that being and having been exploited by a method no one fathomed. But there are means recorded to discern it, but mandated law has to be followed. It is also recorded evidence, and we have to be able to tell about how they pretend they're following mandated law while they are simultaneously communicating and saying other. Now all private tied to interbranch victim predators and the hundreds of nations shared here and there together, military too, here and there. There was a Tony DeMauro and are Joe DeMoros, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, involved with years ago, and through time with people associated with Town Line Mobile in Wethersfield, Connecticut, with judges and with people from Central Connecticut State University, involved with predicate acts intercities with campuses, and with each age of fact, treatment, nature, sickly, distinctly, vertically and horizontally, a whole bunch of ways. For example, in relationship to treatments of the Boston Tea Party, and of James Madison, and of what real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice really means. And that's on their side. And the nature of the law, how it is prevented our side. Regular citizens, regular native nature and value that we are, humanity. Which is why how Native American means actual are prevented sickly distinctly from ourselves. That is an employed fact treatment nature reaction that is, for example, that which is the method, but the method and needed, value nature system by the breaching method that every nation is hurt by. And they self-value uses of overt criminal enterprises maintained specifically to keep them to keep live progressions covered up for the interbranch that are criminally foreign influenced by the same organized crime method, archetypal organized crime, archetypal criminal enterprise, we can call it, the predicate acts delivery system method, the breaching method that forced slavery, invisible but discernible, and bonded natures of identity thefts and uses of them, bonded by a breaching method, a human fact nature breaching method, a human syntax nature breaching method that has all roles pretending other, making conspiracy theories about others, pretending such as politics, for example, against presidents because of their roles with locations, areas, and states, and intercampuses, and simultaneously while inter-businesses. They stack a lot of names that way, involved with judges and courts pretending people are about, fabricating audio and video to prevent people, counters, from lawyers and from overt criminal enterprises and criminals and people associated with body dumping spots and murders involved with predicate acts with them in cases that have nothing to do with that. Involved with them with predicate acts with them with all locations. Tied to the vertical and horizontal database organized crime method that kept and keeps them natures and live progressions and uses of summary convictions of the law, summaries of the law. For example, uses of the phrase "the right to lie." That is recorded and involved with our agency's roles with criminally foreign influenced uses and fake sides of correlation nature and predicate acts, cover-ups, methods that are also offensive and have been offensive. For example, they keep victims that want to communicate with people as the police That's why they say. That's why they say, "Oh, we need to communicate with the people more." But simultaneously, they're leaving out what is actually recorded, confessed, and demonstrated by them simultaneously, while they are pretending other, through getting away with it because criminally foreign influence readings of the statutes, criminally foreign influenced uses and roles with exceptions and exception natures fabricated and roles acting. There are people associated with the Arch Pizza on Route 3 and all along Route 3 that goes by the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices. And that's in Rocky Hill. But that's in Wethersfield, but that place, Arch Pizza, where it was in Rocky Hill. And there's a Zano's dry cleaning place there. And that's recorded, confessed, and demonstrated. And like there are a Mogman family, and our others, I never had a conversation with, that were recorded, confessed, and demonstrated in the past, involved with relevant to active people involved with the corner of Meadowgate and Route 3. And with further, also with on and off of Principal Child Defenders Campus, and with recorded distinct and non-distinct and simultaneously bonded natures of child abuses and of elderly abuses simultaneously through the same families and houses and locations where that are recorded involved with uses of investigations, investigators, and vetting identities to further identity thefts and frauds, and to further the real causes of bonded natures of evil and of motivations unrealized but actually recorded, to keep that screened, breaching method screened, the predicate acts delivery system method, screening method, that has all these motivations, natures, needs, interests, sequence shifting, roles, styles, needs, natures. See, those are sequence shifting style natures. When you anytime you hear any of the things I've ever heard about American history, they left out James Madison's plan. Before the forced theater and the fake counters of the North in collusion with that, self-valued. Per the plan, incomplete, and where and how we're supposed to use that as evidence. And where and how we're supposed to use correlation nature's identity as evidence. There's one identity of truth that is distinct nature of truth that does not deny the slightest exception, does not deny, and it is trying to be sequence true, all ways do not deny exceptions. It is trying to be the value of the order of the active too. Is trying to be the value of, and as the order of what is progressive, too, now and forever, and to what is positive since that was here before this, as its own system. That identity of value progression, values/value progression, that inventions work or not in relationship to it. They are further positive or not in relationship to it. Real legal leadership and proper telling of any science, because they share an identity. I forgot the point is that not point. Correlation Nietzsche wants us to understand the identity that is delicate, soft, and the identity that is hard. Unbreakable, simultaneously, wants us to be able to discern it. See, there are proofs recorded per actually legitimate and legitimate per definitions of Marbury versus Madison, where and how real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice, and not denying exceptions, and not denying exception nature. That should be added to the definition of it. And that should be added where and how the interbranch were supposed to have this integrity. See, but they were maintained. Victims where and how the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and all natures of evil were bonded, not discerning the real causes of the predicate acts delivery system that all were forced rolls with. That means simultaneously it has a whole bunch of meanings that were true always, not denying exceptions. Not denying the slightest exception nature. Not denying exception nature. Not denying the slightest exception. There are so many things there, and discerning of how that simultaneously is correlation nature's means is discernible with this. That can't be, that quality of fact treatment nature's prevented free speech offensively by fake care with its arm around black people, with its arm around white people, pretending to be about black people through their fact treatment nature, that are keeping opinions and convictions and as identity thefts and frauds roles, self-value, styles, not even fathoming how, because they came through these narratives that are criminally foreign influenced, criminal and seditious natures of positive treatments and negative treatments, and name treatments, identity treatments, and truth treatments that can't defend themselves and afford that all that is simultaneously, inherently, actively, and progressively means as our answers to questions at each age of fact treatment nature. This method effectively maintained and maintains that self-valued by all identities of the law, obfuscated for how sickly distinctly they are kept victims and were kept that. So and where and how precedents and statutes were employed, criminally foreign influence delusions wrought to keep that self-value, to keep roles with that perpetually maintained, incapable of defending how they hid the life progressions from that, how they hid roles with that method that was to all points of all individuals of correlation nature. A method to search through each identity's fact treatment nature. When I say nature after something, I'm referring to identity. Identities of titles, jobs. Identities of ground representatives. Identities of native nature representatives. As the species identity of volume is native pure. So Americans can't speak for Native American rights because Americans can't speak for that value progression system that these are tactile ulterior from. That value progression system has needs by words like positive, like facts, like criminal insidiousness nature. Nature, for example, a criminal insidious nature like a wrongdoer, which is an organized crime term. A criminal insidious nature of act, like a predicate act. Note there where and how there are fact treatment nature predicate acts like wire crimes, mail crimes. Note how also those are database relationship crimes, Note how also that predicate acts delivery system method associated with those bonded methods and natures of slavery and of evil sustained. It had everyone sustained, therefore, needs to ignore fake positive in collusion with overt juxtaposed natures of evil. And everyone still needing to speak or shut up and get hurt like that. Then if they need to speak, they need others to hide what they say too. So this individually grouped and together is an identity of value progression, tactical ulterior from the one that is nature, and that is really where and how we are individuals grouped and together. Grouped also as ages, areas, sexes, vertically and horizontally. One identity of value / value progression is in demonstration to us always. All exceptions and all exception nature is in demonstration of it. And how it will only stay positive unto itself. For example, Leith of Hades is an exception and is exception nature as a quality of diffusion that is not its system, that is always also positive unto itself, which is its system. That conjunction to it filled in by our, not just our choices, but the value of our nature in relationship to 5 identities of sequence / simultaneous nature simultaneously. How each of those 5 distinct identities of volume as truth, and or volume as positive, and or volume as the value of 0 and 1 simultaneously, its identity of volume. It is more than, and it is more finite than the definition of simultaneous, while being the only definition that is the equivalent of each definition and of each of its sub-definitions. One identity of value / value progression is. One identity of invention is. And one identity is that relevant to revelations, which is evolution's fruits and gifts and means from nowhere. Unfathomed means. So we use pantheism, for example, and we use the pamphleteers business in every city. We put it down, we set this up though, where it's going to be. So in other words, we're going to have to where high level languages have to do compiling. And then I believe Python has a language, has some kind of thing called last second compiling or something similar name for it. And that's where they, at the last second, they take the code that is made, so you don't have to type as much. And so you can get right to, object-oriented quoting, rather than having to deal with machine code through an operating system and a coding language that we have to do both high level and lower level coding using the phraseology I've learned through watching YouTube videos, but also by reading a book that I have to get the book and then before I quote it or anything. But I'll write the name of it in this video, in the information section below this video. Please like and please share this video. And this is the plan. So the theme of our business, which is not a game, but evolution science, and the species working as one, also in conjunction with and as the game that is using that identity that revealed us, individual grouped and together. Locations, areas, sexes, ages, heights, weights. Boxing's too great, too far. One way to fight, I'll win. Boxing's begin. Beat all. So in other words, we're going to bring a quality of finite. We're going to bring means and nature and method to the fact treatment, nature, syntax treatment, syntax treatments, time treatments, identity ground location treatments, self-valued and defended already in relationship to where things are going to be afforded from. See, but the worst things are there is right there. The worst impositions, and especially even including how they're simultaneous natures of them and ones. Such things right there is easier to discern. Where and how we were exploited by a predicate acts delivery system method that came from since before semi-ancient nations and latter semi-ancient times. And that was before latter ancient times with the modern nation's religions, religious messengers. Thank God for them, for incompleted, for the same reason our founders have an incompleted revolution and have their identities still stolen in our faces, while others pretended simultaneously. That's evidence. They forged names, switched names, and used the crime method of pretending people should sue for rights. Where and how that is relevant to them interbranch forging names and switching names, as ones that were our recorded, confessed, and demonstrated roles with crimes with locations, with crime scenes, leading up to and in the World Trade Center attack, and with campuses. And those same courts and police forms and foreign with them were kept uses of colleges of each age and nature through time in such ways that kept and keeps them needing to hurt each age of correlation nature with the campuses intercities and needing to self-value roles with the what's supposed to be against such used to pretend other, where and how they are involved with a vertical horizontal database organized crime method. There are people when I was in high school that recorded, confessed, and demonstrated are involved with judges and police forms and federal criminals since before they were proven to be federal criminals, associated with a former director of the FBI in a 2006 district court case, which I and others witnessed, and who we were attached to faked audio and video. Also, off the Ninth Circuit Court, right next to the World Trade Center, right before it was attacked. We were victims of recorded, post-dated documents from inside the court. And there were our recorded other natures of predicate acts against us by people in New York City that are criminally foreign influenced, that were also roles intercities through time, roles with connected predicate acts, relevant, for example, to Town Line Drive, and to their roles with the National Guard, and with the Army, and with Navy families, and with Air Force, like a Paul Kelly family. I don't know if Paul Kelly, the only contacts I know him briefly, all stacked natures of confessions and demonstrations. Then they make people hate you because you have to use their names. See, these are people that have people offensively make exceptions while then they have them steal people roles with identity thefts. As people recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, also tied by their roles with predicate acts on and off Fox Connecticut News, and on and off the WFSB, and on and off CNN, and on and off other news media, and roles with, there are journalists that came through Central Connecticut State University that are recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with predicate acts on and off Central Connecticut State University, with many involved with the federal criminals and their co-defendant, and people tied to them and their family members, like their co-defendant, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, recorded, involved, leading up to a 2006 case with predicate acts also, with the buildings next to Fox Connecticut News and next to the church location there, where and how they have the religious locations. They have Jewish community centers involved with judges and with police forms and with their family members and with all identities of jobs and locations and titles and locations and juxtaposition and uses of bonded natures of evil originally and still utilized by a breaching method that no one discerned not only through, and has qualities of fact nature premises treatments that can't and couldn't defend that and afford to have discern or pretend to be honest about what they really perceive when people speak. So they prevent short words, and more they stack short words needed to be spoken by people. The news media and all private tied to the courts and to the police forms. Wethersfield police are also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved intercities with the people, with and as people involved with the courts and the former director of the FBI and the other police departments that were all recorded, confessed, and demonstrated used remotely as victim predators since before electronic definitions of that. This is evidence when they speak. They also use crime methods, forging names and switching names. They also have physical delusions. So we have the crime methods as evidence, crime methods of judges involved with investigations, investigators from various cities like New York, New York, but also Hartford, Connecticut, and New Britain, Connecticut courts. Those are also people through time involved with confessions about other towns' courts and with recorded predicate acts roles on and off the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices, as what is actually recorded, tied to them, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with investigations, investigators, and vetting identities on and off the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices, all along the Route 3 that goes by it, through Wethersfield, locations and roads on and off that, corners associated with that. Now, and so they have investigations, investigators, and vetting identities used remotely originally and still per a method that maintains this motivated. Now, so they have what they call the intelligence community recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with crime methods that other nations they pretend to hate and really do hate, with those methods that are used here and maintained specifically to maintain roles, needs, and natures pretending others simultaneously. Uses of readings of statutes that allow the right to lie and that are forced to need the right to lie, to also need to hide the criminal exceptions of exploited, to also hide criminally foreign influence uses of that. For example, leading up to and in the World Trade Center attack. As those Wethersfield police also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed many ways, and with many tied to them, that a Scalora family is involved with identity thefts with them, falsified police reports, and predicate acts on and off Central Connecticut State University and on and off campuses they didn't go to, where they were involved with identity thefts with me from people from off campuses that were involved with predicate acts on the campuses I did go to, with interbranch and foreign families and overt criminal enterprises, and all that associated with them, and all the, like, even how the Cub Scouts are involved through time with bonded natures of organized crime and methods roles with it. A whole bunch of people tied to a Dillon family that I never had a conversation with verbally, but he's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with a whole bunch of natures of organized crime acts, like predicate acts, against each age of fact treatment nature. And on my street, with the people people using the name Sullivan and McGee, where they have a Wethersfield officers forging and switching names. We only have one officer with that name. These are all also officers recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed with other agencies and with medical doctors that have been attaching me to faked relationships and words and ties to themselves and others since I was a kid, from behind my back, so there's no way to counter that, because I never had anything to do with them. They tried to film exceptions by knowing where people are going to walk. They have WFSB as a camera onto a Middletown location. It used to be a Harbor Park. That place is also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with identity thefts and frauds. And investigators vetting identities, foreign and domestic, military forms, and people involved with predicate acts on my street. Also with their extended family members that Wethersfield police recorded, confessed, and demonstrated. Involved also with the judges and prosecutors and state's attorneys recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, involved with the predicate acts, wire crime acts, methods of Wethersfield police forging names, switching sequences, fabricating audio and video on and off their location, threatening to do that or other, simultaneously pretending other, relevant to those, as only some of the bad things tied to the involving them needing more and more to switch names and to switch sequences. These same ones with Connecticut that have been doing this through time, intercities connected. See, when I was in grammar school in Wethersfield, the same grammar school of a principal's child defender, I wasn't not when I was there. The principal, when I was there, his daughter though, was at the school when the principal child defender, and she had her kid there though, and there are prosecutors with their kids there that were also involved, also with like psychologists and drug cliques with their kids that are also involved with falsified police reports and investigators vetting identities and campuses that are used per predicate acts delivery system method that kept them only capable of hiding live aggressions and needing to vertical and horizontally right back to all locations and campuses and sciences, not just self-valuing that all originally instilled criminally foreign influence all victims, but victim predators, so they couldn't capitalize on or reveal the means of all being victims to the same thing at once. See, this is what the species identity of volume needs to realize. We have to realize that these value nature systems, not one of them, not one modern nation, could afford its logic and the actual means that are already inherent and ready to be afforded by everyone together at once. How many we have more than enough locations to empty out the most forsaken locations. Let everyone have like a corona-free, better than just a vacation, means to step back, because we're in a semi-ancient trap that is inseparable from and has the value of all that is maintained our identity of the ground, systems, and means to fathom, means to afford, individually grouped and together, means to counter all that too, and exploiting how the identity of the grounds, identity of value / value progression, is tactically denatured. We were engineered to fit as fact-cheating nature, incapable, needing to keep the real causes of negative value nature progressions, action nature is blamed on other things other than selves. So everyone could just forget about that and just try to be about positive. Everyone telling everyone it's not in our control. All we need is to have one individual with free speech and sequence true. And what is actually true always, not deny exceptions, the slightest exception. That means the value of the order of the finite. That means the value of every finite detail. Because there is one identity of truth that is exceptions at the same time. But the perfect world is forsaken, per that narrative, also involved with interbranch various natures of police forms, in collusion with the Wethersfield Police, like Connecticut State Police. And their family members are also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with predicate acts on and off Central Connecticut State University, and with courts and prisons tied to the police, and to their roles with predicate acts on and off body dumping locations, on and off forensics locations, all with recorded ties to the same house /S, involved with them further with predicate acts and child abuses with the principal child offenders campus, as ones also recorded with remote uses of the sense and sensibilities of principals, recorded forced to roles with child abuses since before they got caught for it. But they also had collusion with their names were used years ahead of time, like for example by people tied to Sandra Spada, that a Chris Walters recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with AT&T, and other people that recorded, confessed, and demonstrated with him. There was a Dr. Cesaro I used to have. He used to be my dentist. Nice guy. I have no complaints. He moved out of that location. It's on Walker Hill Road. That's recorded, confessed, and demonstrated. And houses near there are involved with judges, and with police forms, and with military families, foreign and domestic, with the neighbors of a Sandra Spada, and that's on Two Rod Highway. And there's a Victorian house. She's recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with doctors, involved with juxtaposed natures of child abuses, including sexual and medical, and medicine, and overt drugs crimes with kids, and through the military, like how they juxtaposed everyone speaking through others, and strangers roles with investigators, and vetting identities, keeping people that they have involved also on off the Berlin Turnpike locations, what is now a Lowe's parking lot. And Lowe's, it used to be a movie place, but it is also in the locations next to it, in the area next to it, is also with many at Central Connecticut State University, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, also involved with the predicate acts on and off Fox Connecticut News relevant, and the methods relevant, and the buildings next to them, and the church location, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, also tied to ties between locations and people associated with the Department of Motor Vehicles in Old Wethersfield, and with the soccer place next to it, and with the cove next to it, and houses and locations next to it, like the woods and river and cove, and street leading into it. All recorded, confessed, demonstrated involvements with the narratives, with the wire crimes and mail crimes and other natures of predicate acts on my street. Also, as people recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involvements with identity thefts, frauds, roles, sequence shift roles, falsified police report, reports roles and subsequently recorded fake passions and emotions and fake motivations, because their actual motivations are recorded too.